Captain Midnight.
So after my Wakanda Forever video, I really felt like sticking with the MCU for another week, but changing it up a little bit. In this one, I want to hone in on one very specific long-standing MCU tradition, the post-credits scene. After nearly 15 years, the post-credits scenes have become almost an institution. Of course, Marvel Studios didn't invent the concept at all, but they probably ended their first film with the most well-known one ever shot, with Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury mysteriously showing up to recruit Tony Stark. Ever since then, these scenes have basically become a requirement. This has given us some exciting teasers, like the first appearance of Thanos, and a lot of jokey one-off scenes, some more successful than others. But the ones I'm most fascinated by are the pointless setups, the scenes that set up these sequels that never quite materialized. Now to be fair, the MCU is better at not doing that kind of thing than many blockbusters. Like, I don't think the post-credits scene of the theatrical cut of Justice League is ever going to be followed up on. Or maybe the most funny failed attempt, the promise of the aliens' return at the end of Peter Berg's Battleship. Yeah, remember when they tried to make a movie out of Battleship? Anyway, while the MCU isn't usually the worst offender here, they don't have a perfect track record either. So that's what I want to talk about this week. After almost 15 years of the MCU, what turned out to be the least consequential setup post-credits in one of these movies? I think it's a fun question and one worth exploring. And to be extra clear, I'm going to be specifically talking about the post-credits scenes that are trying to set things up. So while some of the jokier ones may feel pointless if they weren't funny to you, they're not really what I'm going over here. I'm talking about the ones teasing future developments. And if I sound weird this week, that's definitely because I'm recording at my parents' house over Thanksgiving, but it should all be back to normal next time around. So with all that out of the way, let's get into it.
Watch it!
So my first instinct when trying to find the most pointless Marvel post-credits scene was going to be one of the MCU's biggest failures, the Eternals, since it doubles up on introductions that really could go nowhere. The one that got the most press at the time was Harry Styles appearing as Eros, aka Star Fox, Thanos' very non-purple brother. Then there's Kit Harington's character Dane Whitman taking up the mantle of the Black Knight. Post-credit scenes like these are easily the riskiest because they basically demand to be followed up on. But to be fair to the Eternals, I don't think you can call these pointless yet. It's just way too recent of a movie, and either of these characters could return. I will say that I think stunt casting Harry Styles in this role was a pretty bad idea, and his non-Dunkirk performances haven't really sold me on him as an actor. But still, there's no way to know just yet that these scenes will be totally dropped. The Eternals being kind of a flop could be reason, but for now we'll just have to wait and see. Another film I thought of for this was 2008's The Incredible Hulk, where Tony Stark appears to tell Thunderbolt Ross that he's assembled a team that could help Ross with his problem, kind of setting up this idea that the Avengers could assemble to hunt the Hulk. That would actually make a lot of sense, as early Avengers comics did set up the team against the Hulk fairly frequently. Obviously though, this one didn't end up happening. And even though Marvel made a pretty forgotten one-shot Coulson DVD extra thing to kind of explain it away, this Tony Stark Thunderbolt Ross scene still feels like a tacked on dangling thread. But here's the thing. It can't count. When I think about this scene, I remembered it being a post-credits scene, but it's just not. It's the actual end of the movie. The Incredible Hulk doesn't have a post-credits scene at all. So despite the scene being pretty poorly thought out and seemingly tossed in at the last minute, it definitely gets off on a technicality. Now there's some others I could mention, and probably some that people will be frustrated that I didn't, but when it comes down to it, there's one post-credits scene that I think Marvel has so completely botched that it sticks out like a sore thumb. Spider-Man: Homecoming. And look, anyone who's been watching my channel for a while knows that I like this one. It's actually the first MCU movie I ever made a video on. But as time has gone on, this Vulture and Scorpion scene looks more and more like a missed opportunity. First, there's the obvious, Michael Mando playing Mac Gargan, the future Scorpion. Obviously, there's been a couple of Spider-Man movies since then, and there's been no hints that he's actually going to return. I think this is a huge missed opportunity for a few reasons. One is that Scorpion is one of the few classic Spidey villains who has never really gotten his due on screen. I know he's not as beloved as, say, the Green Goblin or Doc Ock, but I've always had a soft spot for the guy. And I think the MCU is uniquely positioned to do a good take on some of his original comics. This idea that he's kind of the Frankenstein's monster to J. Jonah Jameson's Dr. Frankenstein is a compelling one, with Scorpion coming back to haunt Jonah and Spider-Man having to save him from the man he helped turn into a monster. I know some people probably find it too goofy for J. Jonah Jameson to get too directly involved in funding the creation of a villain, but honestly, that story's always worked for me. I think it's one of the most iconic Jameson storylines. Side note, I also think it's really funny that Jameson only had to pay $10,000 to create the Scorpion. I know it was the 60s, but because these comics are still in continuity, it's like Jameson created a supervillain for the price of like a used Honda Civic. Anyway, Jameson funding the creation of the Scorpion I don't think would have really worked in the Raimi movies, because at the end of the day, JJJ was a pretty stand-up guy there. But the MCU Jameson is way more of a scumbag, and this would feel pretty in line for him. It would also give J.K. Simmons a lot more screen time, which I'm also in favor of in any Spider-Man movie.
I said turn it back on!
Toombs, shut your trap.
What's the matter, Gargan? Don't you want to hear about getting the body you always wanted?
Then there's Michael Mando himself. After his breakout role in Far Cry 3, Mando has only continued to prove how great of an actor he is. He was fantastic as Nacho in Better Call Saul, and really has the ability to convey so much with just a sentence or two. If anything, I think he's way overqualified for this. And that's what I find such a bummer about this scene now. The prospect of Mando as Scorpion, unlike Kit Harington as the Black Knight, is actually an exciting one. It's something I'd really like to see happen. In the classic comics, Scorpion is usually portrayed as dangerous, but pretty impulsive and kind of dumb. I think Mando could improve on that, and create a Scorpion with a real sense of intense menace, quiet confidence, and intelligence. If they never return to this, I think it'll be a huge missed opportunity. Then there's the other side of that homecoming scene, which is just kind of embarrassing. And this one is all on Sony. The fact that we never got a follow-up on Scorpion, but they did bring back Michael Keaton's Vulture in Morbius is just a crime. I think it's that Morbius, of all movies, tries to connect itself to this scene that really takes it to that next level of pointlessness. I love Michael Keaton as an actor, and I think he's great in Homecoming, but his appearance in Jared Leto's magnum opus is downright embarrassing. Not really for anything that Keaton does in his performance, like he shows up and does his job, but the scenes themselves are terrible and feel incredibly stapled onto a movie that was already really bad. So when I think of pointless MCU post-credit scenes, I think Homecoming takes the cake. A great potential character that was never followed up on, and another character that was incorporated into some of the worst scenes in any Marvel Comics related movie ever. That's pretty impressive. I'll also say that as of right now, the Venom scene in No Way Home is looking pretty pointless too, but it's definitely recent enough that I want to give that some time. I find a lot to like in the MCU Spider-Man movies, but man, does it not have the best track record with these. I think my favorite post-credits scene in any of them is the Captain America one, where the entire joke is that it wasn't worth waiting for. In the end, I think the Marvel post-credit scenes can be fun, but the fact that they're basically seen as required by the audience now means that not all of them are going to have all that much reason to exist. But I want to know what you think. Is there a post-credits scene that promised something you were looking forward to and then wasn't delivered on? Do you think the MCU should keep this tradition around? Or maybe Phase 5 is a good time to pull back on them a bit? I'll be reading all your thoughts in the comments below. Oh, I also wanted to mention that I'm having a Black Friday merch sale today. For the next few days, all items in my merch store are 20% off, which means great deals on Captain Midnight pins, stickers, and mugs. Just use code Rebecca to get the deal and use the link in the pinned comment or description of this video.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started. because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes, too.